Honestly, until there was Zeke was like concept, you know, just like that.
Yeah, so
A week early.
right.
I'm kind of thinking for myself.
Yeah, so we have everything from like easy stuff to,
We want to get out. Yeah, no, I know.
yeah, why would doesn't really make it.
Right.
Oh yeah, there was like so much.
Your mic is up.
Yeah,
and also, and then I guess you just use a light. Oh, Ryan. So I assume a couple of weeks ago. I assume that it's the usual. Yeah. Okay, so I don't need to have those much detail.
we haven't done this often. We have done that's a good mark.
I'm gonna wait a minute. I just got sorry. You've got a minute. It's okay.
sir.
You didn't tell me that.
That's what I asked for.
Good afternoon, everybody. I think we're ready to get started. Good afternoon. My name is Mary Sue Barrett, and I'm president of the Metropolitan Planning Council. The Metropolitan Planning Council, if you haven't had the opportunity to join us before, enjoys our work, which involves many, many things, including convening people to learn together. So this is one of those occasional forums. More than a dozen times a year, we pull people together in this conference center to learn about cutting-edge issues, to debate, deconstruct, learn together, and this is not just, that was interesting, and to put it into practice. So we have some questions for you to help us answer today as well. I get to have the pleasure of moderating today's discussion, so I will be back in a moment, but first I want to introduce Chris Newton. Chris is Executive Vice President of Wintrust Commercial Banking at Hyde Park Bank, which as of a few months ago is affiliated with Wintrust Community Bank. He has been with Wintrust for 18 years and a number of other equally impressive institutions, but his tenure at Wintrust Financial has been in the middle market commercial banking area. So he's got a ton of experience to draw from that's relevant to our discussions today. And he has, before becoming head of Executive Vice President at Hyde Park Bank, he was before that Managing Director of Commercial Banking with Wintrust. So this type of anchor institution, which is one of the themes of our discussion today, it's very appropriate that Wintrust is sponsoring today's event. In addition to acknowledging Chris and inviting him to provide some welcoming remarks for us, I also want to give a quick acknowledgement to our board member from Wintrust, Paul Carlisle, in the third row here, has been a terrifically engaged member of the Metropolitan Planning Council's Board of Governors for several years, serving in a bunch of different capacities, and we're delighted to have Paul, and through him, get to know your colleagues like Chris. So welcome, Chris, and thank you for your sponsorship of this forum.
Thank you. I'll probably repeat myself, but I've actually only been at Wintrust for 3 years, not 18. I've been in banking for 18 years. That was probably something I sent you wrong. I want to welcome everybody here on a sloppy day. Thank you. I'm happy to represent Hyde Park Bank and Wintrust as sponsors and being here with some colleagues. Indulge me a little bit while I give you a little bit of the Wintrust commercial. So if you haven't listened to AM radio or seen one of the billboards or read Cranes, or if you're not an avid reader of The American Banker, which I wouldn't necessarily suggest, you may not know as much about Wintrust as those of us in the banking community. Wintrust's charge today is to become Chicago's bank. We are an $18 billion organization that's headquartered here in Chicago, and that consists of 15 community banks throughout the greater Chicagoland area as far north and west as I can think of. I'll mess up if I try to think of the geography boundaries. Our motto is have it all, and by that we mean we want to bring customers the sophistication and breadth of products and services that they need and would be more normally associated with large, sophisticated money center banks, but deliver it in a way that's consistent with the community bank model that is high touch and high service with the customer at the center of every interaction. We're a 22-year-old organization. We're publicly traded, and we're in and around Chicago. So while I'm not new to Chicago or Wintrust of 3 years, I am new to Hyde Park, and it really made me pretty interested in today's topic, and I'm glad to be here for it. I spent some time in Hyde Park 10 or 12 years ago, and I hadn't been back until I've been there for a month now, so I'm kind of learning more about the area. And as I drive around and look, I frequently am kind of shocked at some of the things that are going on in the community and how much it's grown and the number of cranes and housing and so on and so forth. And I've been asking people both in the bank and at Starbucks and at the Potbellies for lunch, what's going on in Hyde Park? And invariably the answer is that the universities put a lot of time and energy, focus, and dollars into the development of the area outside of just the campus. So, you know, the classic anchor institution story, I guess. I really hadn't thought much about anchor institutions until doing that, and then I really paralleled that with what Wintrust wants to be as an anchor institution for the city of Chicago, and more at a level down how each of the community banks under the Wintrust umbrella want to be anchor institutions in each of the individual communities they serve. And so, you know, we think about how we try to do that, and it's really about having leadership within the banks be involved in their communities, be out, be visible, host educational forums, be involved in chambers of commerce, so on and so forth. And then there are a lot of the things that I think maybe will be topical today, where we put programs forth to help in housing so that there is investment in the communities. And I don't want to go into great detail on them, but Path to Own is a program that Wintrust has to help first-time home buyers or home buyers get houses. And this is a down payment assistance program which hits a lot of different areas. It's Chicago public school teachers have access to this. They call it Illinois Heroes, which is veterans and current servers in the state of Illinois, where they get down payment assistance and so on. So we're doing a lot of the same things that I think other people are as an anchor institution, and those are the reasons that I'm excited to hear the rest of today's topics, and I'll turn that back over, and thank you for welcoming me.
Thanks again, Chris. You noted the parallels that are indeed perfect today between Hyde Park Bank and our topic of anchor institutions. How many of you have heard that term before? Is that a familiar term to many in the audience, anchor institutions? Some yes, some no. So the concept is place-based institutions that do not easily relocate. They've got an investment in both their physical footprint, but also in their relationships. It is part of who they are, where they are. And what an institution like Hyde Park Bank or University of Chicago or OTTO Engineering does with that is greatly variable. So we're going to learn a little bit about some of the stars today and hope that we can distill some lessons from that. Anchor institutions have an impact because they're intentional about it. So the stories you will hear today, and there's some wonderful visuals that you'll have a chance to be treated to, I think will help it come to life. I want to tell you a little bit about our two panelists today, and also note that we are web streaming today, as well as we have a partnership with WBEZ and Chicago Amplified. So when we conclude the discussion with our panelists and move to your questions, we'll ask you to wait for the microphone so that we can really capture this for not just those of you in the room, but those who are plugging in online or will listen later. So I'm going to introduce them in the order that you'll hear from them. We're going to start with Derek Douglas. And Derek is a Chicagoan as of a little over a year ago. He came to Chicago from Washington, D.C., where he served President Obama in the White House Domestic Policy Council. He was a special assistant, and his area of responsibility for the DPC was specifically urban and metropolitan policy. He was someone that the Metropolitan Planning Council interacted with. He was a go-to person, and so how appropriate when the University of Chicago was looking for its new VP for civic engagement, that they recruited and convinced Derek to be part of our community. He has fit in quickly, and I'm also proud that he has joined the Metropolitan Planning Council Board of Governors. So Derek's in the process, probably still a work in progress, of reimagining the role of his office on civic engagement and urban development. Urban development is not just city-focused or immediate neighborhood and adjacent neighborhoods. So there's a portfolio of work that is local, neighborhood, and citywide, but there's also an interest that Derek is exploring and acting on that is metropolitan in scale, statewide impact, international and national. It's a big footprint and full of potential, but it starts with a focus on the assets of their place and of the enormous talent of the staff, students, and faculty, and grows from there. There's been a long history of partnership between the University of Chicago and its surrounding neighborhoods, And what you'll hear from Derek is that his job is to make that as positive a partnership as possible. We're going to focus on workforce housing partnerships today, but know that this is definitely not the entirety of the portfolio, which spans everything from arts to workforce to broadband and more. We will next hear from Tom Roeser, who I'm delighted is also agreed to be part of today's panel. Tom is president of OTTO Engineering, and OTTO Engineering is based in Carpentersville in west suburban Kane County, in the northeast corner there of the county. They produce industrial controls for two-way radios, the kind of devices that our first responders use. So filling a critical need, and I believe the number of employees is around 500 of OTTO Engineering. So they're a significant company that started in the basement of his father's home in 1961 and moved from that entrepreneurial start to become today the largest employer in Carpentersville. Tom's mission, in addition to selling his products, is to improve the community of Carpentersville. And he's decided to go about it in a way that's not the story you hear all the time. It's in part through buying and rehabbing and selling distressed properties, creating something called OTTO Homes and a number of ventures that he'll tell you and show you about. He saw a need in the community and decided to take the action steps to address it. So we'll learn about his ventures into real estate development and community development from a business owner's perspective, and think about together how we learn from another anchor institution, a manufacturer who's very committed to their place and wants to improve it. So I mentioned that MPC does roundtables multiple times a year, and each roundtable draws a very interesting cross-section of folks. We're doing another roundtable on Friday, 2 days from now, that will be focused on bus rapid transit and the City of Chicago's plan. And there'll be people like you, but maybe almost no overlap. It'll be a slightly different slice of people who are interested in that topic. What you have in common is that you as an audience are drawn across the public sector, the community and not-for-profit sector, and business of all types, because you care about making this region better and you are inquisitive. So hats off to you for making the time to do this. We are at an inflection point at MPC, which is why we planned this discussion about anchor institutions. For 12 years, we have facilitated an initiative called employer-assisted housing. And it's evolved quite a bit from starting with one St. Charles-based employer back in the year 2000. Today, we are testing out the hypothesis that anchor institutions are an appropriate area for zeroing in and focusing our efforts. In the past, we serve as you could think of us as a matchmaker. We serve as the liaison between a company who might want to offer a workforce housing down payment assistance benefit to their workers, and the housing counseling organizations are reach partners who deliver those services to the company's workers. So we introduce, design, measure, market the initiative. And of course, the housing market has changed just a little bit under our feet in those 12 years. So that's the inflection point I'm talking about. And I hope that you will help us learn from these stories today and give us advice both today and following about appropriate role for MPC. We like to be an incubator and an innovator, and then find a self-sustaining home for ideas that work. And we do think that anchor institutions and solving the jobs housing mismatch in our region are problems worth working on. So I'm going to turn it over to Derek to start us off. We have worked with the University of Chicago for about 10 of the years that we've been doing employer-assisted housing, so almost from the beginning. And the University of Chicago's commitment and role has evolved as well. I mentioned Derek is newer to his job, but one of the things we're excited about is that he's asked MPC to work with the University of Chicago as they rethink and think about expanding their commitment to employer-assisted housing. So please welcome with me Derek Douglas with the University of Chicago.
Good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to start by thanking MPC and Mary Sue for inviting me to speak and really for bringing attention to this topic, which I think is a very important one, the role of which anchor institutions can play in working in partnership with their community to bring more opportunities and investments to those communities. What I'm going to do today is focus on our employer-assisted housing program, but as Mary Sue mentioned, there are a lot of other things that we do across the university through my office to try and have an impact on society. And the way we think about civic engagement really is about the ways in which the university has that kind of impact on society through the main avenues in which a university engages. So there's the educator role, teaching students, providing experiential learning opportunities, bringing in people from the community to provide education opportunities. There's the research role, and we have a lot of excellent programs like our Crime Lab, our Urban Education Institute, that is doing cutting-edge research, but in a way that could be applied and used by policymakers and practitioners to improve people's lives. And there's also the anchor role, and that's the one that we're talking about today, and that's just the fact of a university being a place-based institution, hiring people, buying things, developing things, and thinking about how can you do that anchor activity in a way that benefits the community and has the multiplier effect of impact. So I'm going to go through and focus on the employer-assisted. What button do I just do the?
How about this? Even easier. There you go.
Okay.
Just the one, the arrow to the right.
Okay. I also just wanted to recognize there's a person from the university with me today, Kimberlyn Davis. If you could just stand. She is the person, she works in the facilities department, but she administers our employer-assisted housing program on a day-to-day and has done a lot of excellent work in helping us rethink the program. So as Mary Sue mentioned, our employer-assisted housing program, we launched it 10 years ago. And the idea behind it was to encourage more university employees to locate in neighborhoods in and around the university. If you look at where the university is, we're on the south side, as I'm sure most of you know, and we're in Hyde Park. But if you look at the neighborhoods around, they've been going through a lot of economic challenges over the last several decades that have had a significant impact on their economic vitality and vibrancy. And so part of the idea was how can we as an anchor institution, hiring all these people, use that ability to help better support these neighborhoods. And when I'm talking about a lot of change that some of these communities have gone through, it's quite significant. If you look at a Woodlawn, decades ago it was 80 or 90,000 people. Now it's down to about 20,000 people. That's right, part of our campus is in the Woodlawn community. In Washington Park, they used to have a population of around 50,000, and now they're down to 11 or 12,000. And that's right adjacent to the university. We actually have property there as well. So the university, I think, recognized the need for people to live in and invest in these neighborhoods where they have challenges. And so we're using our role as an anchor to incentivize that kind of activity. I just wanted to put a list of the partners that we have working with us. Mary Sue mentioned some, but you have the internal ones. Those are the different groups across the university: my office, facility services, the medical center, benefits and financial services. And it's important to note this program is not just the university, but it's the university and the medical center collectively involved. And our external partners have been fantastic: MPC, the Neighborhood Housing Service, which provides the mortgage notes, as well as the banks that have been involved. I think Hyde Park Bank has also been a great partner to us in this effort. This slide lets you know, provides some information on kind of the current program and some of the boundaries and the way it currently works. Right now, we target 9 neighborhoods in the Mid-South, which you can see on the map. The one that in the top left corner, that's a little piece of the Douglas neighborhood. We didn't label it there. But there are 9 neighborhoods included. And the way we break them down are primary areas and secondary areas. The primary areas are the ones in the orange, and those are the ones that have a greater need in terms of investment population. The secondary areas are Hyde Park and Kenwood, where the university is. And we break them down that way because we alter the income threshold. So there's an income requirement currently to qualify for the program, and if you're moving into a Woodlawn, for example, your income can be a bit higher than if you're moving into a Hyde Park or Kenwood, where the need is not as great. But we still have a preference for people moving into Hyde Park, moving into Kenwood, than moving into some other part of the city or the suburbs. So there is an incentive that's created there. The income restriction is 120 AMI, area median income, and the subsidy is the same in both primary and secondary. So it's $7,500 that you get for a down payment assistance for your home, whether you're going in the primary or secondary, but the only distinction is really the income threshold. It also, if you're in a primary area, Hyde Park, the orange areas, there is no first-time home buyers requirement, but if you're in Hyde Park or Kenwood, you have to be a first-time home buyer, meaning that if you live in Hyde Park now, you can't buy another home in Hyde Park and use the program. If you're moving into the city, like myself, you can move in and use it, or if you're in Hyde Park and you're moving to a Woodlawn, you can get it. So that's our current program. I wanted to also provide a few maps that just show kind of how the impact that the program has had. This first one just provides a broad overview of where the university and hospital employees are currently living throughout the city. And as you can see, on the south side, first of all, you see a large segment up north. But on the south side, most of the employees live in Hyde Park, followed by Kenwood and Woodlawn, those neighborhoods right around the university. But there's a huge concentration of people living on the north side, starting at the South Loop, going up all the way to Lakeview. We also, I don't know if you can read the numbers, but it shows you that there's a significant number of employees living in the suburbs, some in Michigan, Indiana, and Wisconsin as well. The next slide shows the employer-assisted housing program purchases. And as you can see, the purple dots are university employees, the green squares are hospital employees. And you can see that the majority of the take-up for the program has also tended to be in the Hyde Park, Woodlawn, Kenwood neighborhoods. Although we are seeing some in all 9 of the target neighborhoods, the majority is going there. And I'll talk a little bit later about some tweaks that we're making to be a little bit more targeted and strategic with the impact of the program. This next slide shows the housing type, which I think is interesting, but not surprising. The red squares are are condo purchases. And I live in Hyde Park when I moved, and I bought a condo. There's a huge kind of condo pool in the Hyde Park neighborhoods. And so it's not surprising to me, particularly at the more affordable levels. The single-family homes in Hyde Park, Kenwood, are quite expensive. And so when you have the income thresholds, it's not surprising that you would see more people purchasing the condos. In neighborhoods that have a little bit more single-family housing stock, like a Greater Grand Crossing, you do see some take-up with the single families. But for the most part, you're seeing the condo market being the main driver for the types of housing people are buying. This next slide shows the racial and ethnic breakdown of where the people in the employer-assisted housing program have purchased. And as you can see, in the Hyde Park, Kenwood, Woodlawn neighborhoods, you see more Caucasian and Asian families buying there. And in the primary areas of Oakland, Grand Boulevard, Woodlawn, Washington Park, you see more African-American families going there, which I thought was an interesting dynamic. The next slide just is a timeline and a program trajectory which walks through some of the milestones of the program. As Mary Sue mentioned, the program was started in 2003. in addition to the financial incentive, there's counseling services provided by NHS and others. In 2008, the university started to provide more internal credit counseling, and we found that the counseling piece is a really critical component to making the program successful. In 2010, we expanded on that, which brought some savings to the program. In 2012, through, or to date, we've assisted 220 employees, counseled over 900 employees, and invested over $1.5 million in providing this assistance through the program. I wanted to talk a little bit at the end about some of the enhancements and differences we're making. As you saw through the slides, the program has been quite successful. I think that, over $1.5 million, over 200 people that are moving into the area that otherwise might not have moved into the area, I think is a very positive story. But you also see that a lot of the concentration was in a couple of the neighborhoods, Hyde Park, Kenwood. We weren't getting the penetration in some of the other neighborhoods that had greater need. And so we decided to take a look and see what could we do to improve the program and to make it more strategically aligned with the development work that we're doing in partnership with the neighborhoods around. We work a lot with Woodlawn, we work a lot with Washington Park, we work with some of the other neighborhoods outside of Hyde Park, and we said, how can we realign or readjust our current program to be strategically supportive of those other initiatives? So there's a few things that we're considering. We haven't nailed it down, but this is the direction we're going. I would love, when we have the discussion, to get people's input or ideas about this. The first is to tier the program. I'll combine both the financial incentives and the income restrictions together. But is to tier the program as opposed to just primary and secondary, but to make it a three-tiered program. The secondary areas would stay the same. Those are Hyde Park and Kenwood, the areas that are getting most of the attention now. In those areas, what we would look to do is to keep the income restriction at 120 AMI and the first-time home buyer provision. But we would reduce the assistance from $7,500 down to $5,000. We want to keep an incentive there because we do have an incentive for people to move into Hyde Park and Kenwood over, Lincoln Park or something like that. But the program has been working pretty well to get people coming in there, and so we thought tiering it a bit could make sense. For the primary areas, those were those other 7 neighborhoods around the university. What we would do is to take some of the restrictions off and expand the incentives. So we would say we're looking to put no income restriction if you want to move into a Woodlawn or a Washington Park or a Grand Boulevard or one of those neighborhoods. And no first-time home buyer restriction. The idea being it's important, and if you talk to the folks from Woodlawn, for example, Dr. Brazier, people on the network of Woodlawn, they're trying to bring more income diversity into their communities. They're trying to bring more investment into their neighborhood. And so we thought that having an income restriction didn't necessarily make sense if you want to try and align it with the goals of the community to further investment and activity in the community. We also are looking at increasing the incentive there, making it a $10,000 incentive to give a little bit more energy to people who are looking to live in that area. The third category, which would be a new one, is what we're calling targeted developments. And that would be to target specific projects or specific developments in some of the neighborhoods that are most in need around the university, like a Washington Park or a Woodlawn. An example of that could be, and I see Bill Eager here, but they're doing the choice neighborhood redevelopment of the Grove Park public housing project there in Woodlawn. So what a targeted approach might do is say, if that's a community priority to try and make that successful, let's create an extra incentive to try and support people who want to live in that development. And that would be closely designed in partnership with the community so it's aligned with the projects that make sense. For that, again, no income restriction, no home buyer restriction, and we're looking to make an assistance of $15,000 is what we're looking at right now. Very quickly, let me talk about, because my time is up, the rental side. So if you look at the employer-assisted housing programs that exist across the country, most of them are targeted to people who are buying homes. It's slanted in that way. It's to get people to do that type of activity. But as Mary Sue mentioned in her opening, the housing market has changed, and there are more and more people looking to rent. And when I was in the White House, one of the areas I focused on was rental housing and this notion that that needs to be supported, and it's not less than people who are trying to buy homes. So what we're looking to do is to create a new element to the program, which would be around rental assistance, where, again, we would target this. We're not exactly sure, but we might target it to the targeted development neighborhoods, not the areas, but the neighborhoods, like a Washington Park or a Woodlawn, maybe a primary area. But we would provide the security deposit and first month's rent for people who want to rent in the first year, and in the second year, provide 1 month's rent. The subsidy isn't as large as what the home buying one, but one of the big barriers for people to rent is getting that security deposit and that first month down, that initial check that you have to write to get in the property. So that would help do that. The security deposit, the university could recoup when the money is returned if the person moves out of the neighborhood. Or if they want to transition to purchase, we're thinking about maybe letting that roll over to help them with the down payment of their home. We're also doing, I'm going to end here, but we're also going to look at various ways to do the marketing, because a big part of making a program like this successful is to really get the word out to the employees coming in and those who currently are employees, to get them to take it up, as well as the supportive services. And finally, we're looking to engage other anchor institutions on the south side to see, I've already talked to MSI, to see if there are others that might be interested in participating in a similar program, so we could leverage each other's work to support this kind of investment. Thank you.
I really appreciate you being specific about I appreciate you being specific about both the offerings of the University of Chicago, how they've changed, and also the things that are on the drawing board. So I look forward to your discussion of that. Tom, I want to invite you up to the podium to share the story. We're now moving from one type of anchor institution, an ed and med institution, to a manufacturing institution. Looking forward to hearing your story. Would you like the handout? Or?
I need this.
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank Lily, Mary Sue, for inviting me here. I'm an engineer and a businessman, and there's a couple things that you're going to hear today. And one that's a little unusual is I'm not a philanthropist. And when people see what I've been doing, they're going to say, oh, you're a philanthropist. You're doing this for the good of the community. I'm a businessman that is doing things for his own survival that, by the way, helped the community. Here today in the audience is Jim Hawk, who is our Director of Community Development in Carpentersville. And without his help, I cannot do the things that we're doing. First, as a manufacturer, OTTO makes stuff. And I need, it's all for demanding application. It might be a forklift truck. It might be the on-off switch on your golf cart. It could be the speaker microphone or communication for a soldier or a fireman. The kinds of employees that I have could be an unskilled employee or a scientist or a machinist. I need to attract people from all kinds of areas. In 1968, we moved our business to Carpentersville because it had a good supply of labor. We were in Cook County, which has a head tax, has regulation, and the supply of labor in our area was not so high. But what we moved to was a very old town that started in 1871, and part of the theme of this is Carpentersville, which is halfway between here and Rockford, is the tale of two cities. It was started in the 1860s and 70s. A man named John Carpenter came out to the Fox River, and he built a business making plowshares. He employed 2,000 people. But when I got there, this vibrant business had turned into a slum. That's what people think when they think of Carpentersville. I needed to be able to attract employees. And they would drive by this building that was next to where my building was, and they would say, why would I want to work here? But eventually, we started working on cleaning up our neighborhood. It was good for us, but it inured to the benefit of the community. And now we're very proud. We've celebrated 50 years since my dad started in the basement. Around OTTO, we could fix the buildings that we were in, but now we had neighbors who either couldn't afford to or did not want to maintain their homes. A man's home is his castle. You've got zoning laws and the rest, but if he abides by them and doesn't invest, that's what happens. But if you buy that man's castle, then you can control the environment. So I started buying up homes around OTTO. If you stood at the front door of OTTO, wherever you looked, if you see a house is in good shape, it's a house that we own, and then we rent it to a caretaker, an OTTO employee or a relative of an OTTO employee. And what we tell them is the outside is more important than the inside. You do what you want on the inside, but the outside your neighbors see. And so we've been able to, that's that same building. We tore one down and fixed the other. That was a dilapidated building. If you come to downtown Carpentersville, which I would invite you all to do, if you haven't been there in 5 years, you haven't seen what has happened in Carpentersville as it has flourished. But Carpentersville had a bunch of housing stock that got very tired. Now I'm going to talk to you about two different housing stocks. Carpentersville, as I started, was the tale of two cities. It started in 1871 and is an industrial town. But in the 50s, a man named Biesinger built 5,000 homes for the returning soldier. And some others Biesinger built some row houses. They all got into disrepair, and it was part of the foreclosure crisis in Carpentersville. The Morningside neighborhood of Carpentersville is 138 townhomes. I went to Habitat for Humanity, I went to the Carpentersville, Illinois. Nobody could help. And so I rolled up my sleeves as an engineer and started buying these homes. And now we own about 70 of the 135 of them. And we got them down to the studs. And then we put an employee or an employee referral at a low-cost rental to take care of the outside. The first employee did not want to rent there. And later, that same employee came to me and wanted to buy the unit. And I said, your rent is way cheaper than you could buy this, and I don't really want to sell it. Why do you want to buy it? When we moved here, my husband did not want to move there because of the neighborhood's reputation, and now he does not want to leave. The police would tell you they were in there 3 times a day. Now they haven't been in there in 3 months. So this inures to me because I'm fixing a neighborhood where my employees can live. But it inures to the neighbors too. That's the other side of the river from what so I looked at that for years as a slum landlord, owned the other parts of the Illinois Iron and Bolt Company. But we were eventually able to buy it, and that's now what downtown Carpentersville looks like, and my business is in all 3 sides of this area. There was a little school that went up for sale, and I paid $125,000 for that school. That tells you the condition that the school was in. I didn't want that school, but I didn't want it to maintain as a slum. So now it is a revitalized business. The Chamber of Commerce is a renter there. Habitat for Humanity is a renter there. It's a low-cost rental if they take care of it. Because it was a school, it has a gymnasium and a fitness center that we put in it. So it's a very nice office building. And those buildings looked like that. But we rebirthed it into this. But I'm not done. So in 2008, the foreclosure crisis hit America, and I was driving through the neighborhood that is called Meadowdale. It was built in the 50s for these returning soldiers, and I found 200 empty homes. I don't mean dilapidated, I mean empty and a pit. First home I bought, my wife would not go in. She thought, as she said, you need to have your head examined. The first thing we did was to put a sign in the front yard, signifying to the neighbors that we were going to be refurbishing this home and retaining their value for optimism of them. You put a dumpster in front of a house, and immediately someone comes over and says, what is that dumpster all about? But this is what a foreclosed home looked like. And I didn't want a nice house. If it was empty and nice, let someone else buy it. I wanted the house no one would buy. Take the worst house off the street, and you can turn that into this. And what we found as we went to try to sell these homes, and I'll sell them for what I have in them. I'm open book on the cost. What we found was that the realtor that I had hired went around to different realtors, and they said, oh, your price is too high. And what we were having competition with is someone who went in with a paintbrush and painted the living room or put in, and what he explained was, no, we take these down to the studs. If the floorboards need to come up, they need to come off. And it is a total reconstruction. And they came up with the concept of OTTO Engineering is known for putting things in the Space Shuttle F-15's demanding application. We're known in our town for quality performance. That's an OTTO home. And we came up with the branding of the quality of the home based on the integrity of our business. We have purchased 135 homes. We've sold 30. We probably have 15 of them under construction and 80 on our on our Homes by OTTO webpage, commission for anybody who sells a home. All of this area was for returning soldiers after the Korean War. And what better person to occupy one of these homes than a veteran? So not knowing that there are other avenues available through other grants, we started a program for offering $10,000 assistance to any veteran who will buy a home. And we still would offer that, and I found out from Lily today we can get a match and make them twice as happy. But we now, every home, every sign has a branded OTTO sign. And when we buy a home, it is amazing. It has been the best advertising program for my company that, and I didn't intend it to be, because people refer people to come to work at OTTO. You should go work at OTTO. It's a great place to work. And what happens is when we put that dumpster in, they all come over and what's going on? They find out it's OTTO and they go, oh, we're so happy OTTO is buying the house next door. But one of the most proud things for me is the little slum of downtown Carpentersville. Now is where they start the 4th of July parade. And that's my little briar patch of OTTO Engineering.
Thank you, Tom. Pretty inspiring, both of these stories. And I hope you agree that there's lots to talk about. One of my questions is, why are you so unique? Why aren't there more educational and healthcare institutions? Why aren't there more manufacturers? There's certainly other employers that are place-based who can see the value proposition in the way that your institutions do. So I will toss that open as the first question and give you a minute to formulate your questions, and we'll get to those next.
I think it's a good question. I mean, you know, part of a decision by a university, there's kind of a fundamental decision you have to make as to whether you're going to try and be an active, engaged, that's going to be part of who you are, or you're not. And if you are that, you start to think about the different avenues through which you can have an impact, which would lead you to a program like the employer-assisted housing program. Where you are as a university, where you're situated and what's around, that makes a difference. As Tom talked about, part of his motivation was he had a business in an area that was run down and needed some help. If he was in an area that was vibrant and lively, he might not have taken the same course. And you know, at the University of Chicago, being on the south side, which has gone through a lot of challenges, had a lot of economic turmoil, there was a significant need right around the university that we could help to contribute to. It's good for the university to have employees nearby, but it's good for the university to have the neighborhoods that are trying to revitalize, help them to revitalize. And so I think that one of the things that motivates us that maybe is different than a university that's not in that same scenario is a desire to have this kind of impact and a recognition of the need around us. Those are just a couple of factors that I think are relevant to the thinking of these institutions.
There are a lot more businesses than there are universities or hospitals. And businessmen look out for their own interest. And Kane County came to me and said, we would like you to spend some neighborhood stabilization grant money for us. They had $1.5 million. And so we did that for them. We bought 7 homes and turned them into the OTTO Home program. And they then got on a bus, all 32 members of the county board, and they went to tour 7 homes that we had done for them in Carpentersville and some additional homes that they had done in Elgin. In Carpentersville, they were very happy with what they saw. I provided them lunch, and I made a little presentation similar to what I showed you. And my theme really was, if you haven't been to Carpentersville in the last 5 years, it's a different place. And at the end of this, one of the county board members said to me in the audience, they said, you know, we have the same problem in Aurora. How can we get other businessmen in Aurora to do this? And I looked out at the crowd, and remember, these people are my guests. And I said to them, I'm from the government, I'm here to help. And nobody laughed. And then I went on, and I said, you know, you didn't laugh, but you are the government. You make all these rules and regulations. And businessmen, this is a strong word, businessmen hate you. And if you were to go to a businessman in Aurora and say to him, we would like you to help rejuvenate our town. It'll be good for you, the businessman, and for our town, and we'll help you get through the regulatory process. We will hire someone who will be the regulatory gatekeeper for you. Businessmen wouldn't believe them. So one of the problems that we have is unleashing the entrepreneurial spirit in this, because the business-private partnership or business-public partnership that is happening in Carpentersville could be done everywhere. And I have lost no money. I have made no money. I'm a catalyst on this. At the end, I'll be perfectly fine financially, but it'll be a rebirth.
A follow-up for you, Tom, on that. In the time that you've been trying different strategies, has your relationship changed at all with Carpentersville leadership? You've developed a track record. Have they responded, and has it gotten any easier?
At the national level, I think that the public discourse is that government distrusts businessmen. Everybody loves jobs, they hate business people. And when I started to do this in Carpentersville, they distrusted me. They thought that I was doing this only for my own financial enrichment, and they were minion regulators. It was horrible. And at one point, I tore a house down and said, I'm not even rebuilding it. You've made this so difficult. They've got a new group in town, and it is very refreshing, and they can't, so the answer is yes, I have seen a change, and management is the whole change. Workers get modified behavior by better management, and that's flourishing. So, yes. Jim is new, so he doesn't know all of this, but
You've got the
he's part of the solution.
wounds to show, right?
He's part of the solution.
So we've managed our time well, so we do have time for questions from the audience. What I'm going to ask you to do, as Ryan and others make their way around, is to please state your name. I'll recognize you, and then state your name and affiliation so we can get that as part of our recording as well. We'll start here in the third row. That'd be great.
So I'm with One Trust as well. I'm also with One Trust. And I just had a question in terms of like the community, it improved so much in Carpentersville. Did it result in other employers coming to the area?
There was one employer who came to the area from Cook County, and he said he came for tax reasons. I don't think anybody has come to the area because the area has greatly improved. The dynamics of businesses right now is not as great as you might see. From an investment perspective, between 2008 and 2010, nobody bought a home in that neighborhood except me. But there are now others that are buying homes on speculation and fixing them, and they are able to sell them. I've raised the average price of the homes by just saying that this is the quality level that you can get.
So your question is a good one. It's the ripple effect on attracting other employers, but also attracting other purchasers. And we'll see, I think, with the interesting housing cycle that we're entering another housing cycle, we'll stay in touch with Tom to continue to track that story. I'll go to the back to Jim Mann.
Jim Mann, for Mr. Roeser. Are you a privately held company? And if so, do you think that makes a major difference in your ability to do this kind of leveraging, which you've done, as opposed to a publicly traded company where you have to be accountable, quote, to public shareholders?
I am a privately held company, and I'm reflecting on your question. Publicly held companies have way more money than I have. They have organizations that say you need to be philanthropic, so they should have all kinds of motives to do this. Why they don't all do this, I don't know. I'm sure that there are some. There are a lot of unsung heroes out there.
Derek, can I also ask you to reflect back on your national role as you were working with lots of different cities and regions, struggling with finding the right incentives to get employers to participate? What's your take on what needs to change?
Well, I think that when I think back about the different cities or different companies or anchors that were engaged in this kind of activity, I've said this before. I don't mean to overemphasize it, but it was stemming from a view that there was a serious situation that they were facing, a desperate situation. I remember when Detroit was talking to us about doing some of this stuff, and that they had to take some action. The anchors had to take some action to try and to reverse the course. I do agree with Tom's point that I think that more anchors could be doing this and should be doing this. Some of it may be getting the word out and knowing this is available, which MPC has done a good job at approaching people, letting them know there's this avenue out there to really make an impact, and you've gotten people to take it up. But I think that there's that need element that is crucial. I think from a federal perspective, there may be some best practices or some incentives that could be introduced to encourage businesses to do this type of activity or anchors to do this type of activity. But I don't think there are a lot of programs out there right now. It was one of those things where I viewed it from a best practice of what cities were doing and was trying to spread the word. And one of the reasons I'm trying to push the envelope at the university is from seeing the impact it had when I was in the White House.
I also want to just I'll get to your question in one sec, put a face on these trends that we're talking about. Could you both just offer a quick sketch of a home purchaser? You shared some charts with us, Derek, but what types of workers are moving into these homes? And maybe you can describe a little bit of the income range of your workers at OTTO as well.
I think that, Kimberly could actually probably speak more to it, but because of the income, if you look at the income thresholds we have, for, I think it was family of 80,000, something like that. A lot of the workers that are going into these jobs, you have some faculty, but some of it is the people who are working in administrative jobs, people who might be working in some of the service positions, the medical center, nurses. The average person who's working at the university is the one who is taking and benefiting from this program. So it's really targeted to that group in the community, not the high-end executive, whatever, that sort of thing. And it's made a huge difference. We've heard the feedback that we get from people who participated and were able to buy a home in the first place that they never thought they would be able to get because of this extra assistance is really huge. And in some of these neighborhoods, the homes are not as expensive. So getting a $7,500 down payment, that takes a big chunk out of what you would have to put down, if not all of what you have to put down. So it's really been very, very significant.
Game changer.
Yeah.
Tom, how about your workers?
Well, I will seller finance. So some people do not have credit. Some people have down payment money. So a typical person that I have seller finance might be a high school principal. He'd gone through a divorce. He has a good job, no credit score. He's fine. An employee who has $5,000, they can get through the low-cost investment, and then we'll offer them a seller finance note. So it's all over the income scale, and Price of the homes is like 125,000 to 155,000.
But I just wanted to get that out there. I think we have a question back here, and then I'll come over to you, Bill.
Hi, Mary Lou Seidel. I'm the new director of NHS of the Fox Valley. So, Tom, you had brought up...
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. Plus, I want to meet with Tom one of these days. You had brought up that you found it easier at times to just demolish a house rather than work with the municipality, and I'm wondering what barriers there were originally that have since, and how they were since removed.
Bureaucrats come in all kinds. And if they don't know, they are the worst kind. The most educated person, whether it be a purchasing agent or a code enforcement officer, to me, is the best person to work with. We had many arbitrary code requirements that they would place on us. And at one point, it was a misunderstanding. The code enforcement guy, we were renovating a home, and we took a wall down, and now he said you couldn't put the wall back up. And I said, well, if I can't put the wall back up, I'll take the house down. And so we just took the house down.
Painful experience. Bill?
This is for Derek. Derek, hi, I'm Bill Eager. I'm with POA. We're a developer in Woodlawn. I had a question about how a developer like us, and we're doing housing for we're doing more than Section 8 replacement housing. We'd obviously like to tap into employees of the university and the hospital. So how would you recommend that we get the word out to so many people that work across a vast, pretty decentralized institution?
I think that goes to the, one of the enhancements we want to do around the marketing, which is to really reach out to developers, people in the community, to advertise, including our advertising packet, the opportunities that exist for the employees. Right now, we do some tours and we will talk about the program, but I don't think there's as much about the, the different development options and that sort of thing. And I know Kimberly has been looking at ways to really step up and enhance our marketing ability. The other thing we're going to need to do as we move into this expansion is to sit down with members of the community, people like yourselves, to identify where should those target developments be. Where are the places that it's in the community's priority, it makes sense for the university to really try and generate more activity, more people, like your kind of development. And so that will be happening, I think, as well. I have a guy named Will Towns, who you know well, who joined me not too long ago, who will be helping to oversee this program. And so we're expecting to do a lot of engagement with the community as we develop this out.
I'm going to ask a quick follow-up, and then I'll go to you for a question. The options that you shared with us, Derek, included a potential expansion into rental, and I believe, Tom, you also spoke about how you have purchased and rented and also sold. I don't know if that's still true, that you have properties that you rent.
The properties that I rent are properties I want to control.
I see.
The ones around OTTO, I want to control for sure. And in the Morningside subdivision, where the 135 are, they're in blocks of homes. There might be 10 townhomes per building. I don't yet own an entire building, so I can fix the inside but not the outside.
I see.
I will sell them eventually.
Okay. So we are seeing in our work on housing issues generally that there's a real sea change on people understanding that not everyone is cut out for home ownership, and that the importance of having rental product and a mix of housing types in every community is just what our workforce needs. So I would assume that you would hear about that demand through your own workplace. Are you already hearing that? That there are people who are interested in contributing to anchoring the neighborhoods, but they are not ready for home ownership?
Yeah. We've heard some of that, but I think it's just a reality. I mean, we have some of our Hyde Park family here as well, and they will tell you that in some of these neighborhoods, there's a dearth of rental housing, particularly rental housing that's affordable. And so for the university to be able to provide a subsidy to help people to better afford getting some of that housing is important. I believe that once we add the housing component, this is really going to be a significant uptick in the program, because one of the reasons why we're looking at doing some tweaks is that the program participation has started to dwindle over time. as the housing dynamics have changed, less people are trying to buy houses or can afford, or their credit may be challenged. And so by providing the rental program, it will now bring a lot of people who don't have housing as an option anymore, or are saying, I want to hold off on housing for a while, an ownership, to get in to the community around the university, in these neighborhoods, to start being part of those areas.
And there's an interesting packaging potential for some of the tweaks and incentives that you're talking about, of targeting developments like Bill's, and both ownership and rental incentives, so that you're ensuring the success of those developments and the ripple effect that you have on each other. So I think that's terrific. You mentioned that participation has decreased,
Yes.
and we have seen that across our portfolio of partners. It has a lot to do with the economy. It also has to do with the lending environment, the homeownership macro trends, and yet anchor institutions, this is why we chose to focus on this today, in some communities, not perhaps in all, is an intriguing area for us to zero in and focus our efforts. Tied to economic development, these are healthy sectors: manufacturing, healthcare, educational. They're among the few shining star spots in our economy, and we ought to help those institutions thrive. I want to just recognize that one of our board members is helping us with this reassessment and look. Kathy Hannon from KPMG has helped arrange a team of folks, and one of the individuals is here with us today, Liz Carey, and one of her colleagues is dialed in, Trish Tweedley. And so thank you for your partnership with us to take an assessment. The assistance of KPMG's team is really going to help us help institutions like these to deliver something of value and identify others. Ask you for you to introduce yourself here with the question in front.
Good afternoon, Darlene Dugo with Mercy Portfolio Services and the program manager for the City of Chicago's Neighborhood Stabilization Program. Will was my colleague previously,
Yeah.
as well as Ellen Solly.
Right.
I'm wondering, tell me, how do you measure success of these programs? Prior to working at Mercy, I worked with Fannie Mae on EAH with Samantha DeCove and Robin Schneiderman, and it really, it really took off in the early and mid 2000s, and I think we have noticed a decline. So I guess, how do you measure success, and how can we kind of circle back and bring this back to the heyday that we saw in the early 2000s, given the current, given the current economics for employers?
Well, part of the decision to kind of take a fresh look and add some new components was, born out of this recognition that it was declining and we weren't achieving the level of success that we wanted. If the motivation to do it is to try and bring more employees living on the south side in and around the university, and to try and help with the revitalization or contribute to the revitalization of the neighborhoods around the university, those are kind of the two ways I would measure success. So are we getting more people to participate in the program, take up, and how is that moving? And are we getting people that are going into areas and then we're starting to see some transformation in those areas? Right now, I don't know that we have done a lot of measuring of metric type of work with respect to the program, other than how many people participate and where they go. But we are thinking about putting some of these metrics in place to really evaluate where it's going. We're talking about doing surveys with employees to see why they took it, why they passed on it, that sort of thing, to help inform the program design. But in my mind, my hope is that by making these changes, we will see many more people going in, we'll be strategic and aligning to support development that's happening on the south side, which will contribute to the broader goal of revitalization.
I can also in part respond to your good question. It's the question of the day. The market is clearly very different. Mm-hmm. When in the early 2000s, we were growing about 4 times as fast as we had been in prior decades. So there was this huge competition for workers, and you had to differentiate yourself if you were a hospital from your competitors to retain and attract that healthcare worker. It's different today, clearly. So the employment climate is different, and the mortgage lending climate is different. At the high point, Metropolitan Planning Council and our REACH partners were working with about 70 employers, and it's a much lower number today. In part, and this also is a question to Tom, looking at the trend that is, I think, still one that's playing out, but the reshoring of manufacturing, the interest in how we can capture our share of manufacturing activity here in Illinois, where it's been an important component, but a shrinking component of our economy. If we tackle the bureaucracy, red tape problem, and we figure out the incentives that are the ones that workers need and the ones that companies are willing to, that are easy to use, do you feel that there are other manufacturers who would be interested in participating in this? Do you feel like this manufacturing is a sector where there could be some pickup?
Well, look to the neighboring states. The neighboring states have passed laws, right-to-work laws, and people are putting manufacturing businesses in states that have right-to-work laws. So surely we can compete with the offshore sources. I have about 100 people equivalent in China. They're not as efficient, so I use the 100 people equivalent. I have more than 100 people. But we don't do anything in China that is of what I will call a high-tech or of a responsive nature, because they're not good at that. And people here want instant gratification. You want your bread today. You wouldn't wait for 2 days for the baker to get it to you. And manufacture the same way. So there are tremendous opportunities in America. But people got to stop hating the job creators.
We got to make it easy to help them. I want to make sure I'm getting to questions. Are there others that we've missed in the back? Or on the other side? Yes. Could you make your way over to this side over here? Terrific.
Thank you. My name is Tom Clark, and I'm with the Verde Group, our planning and development firm. I have a question for Mr. Douglas. Anytime an anchor institution works with a community, there is always a critical need to link with the existing social and faith-based community organizations. In that regard, how have you accomplished that, or how do you propose to accomplish that with your program?
Thanks. That's an excellent question. And we've been doing, I think, a pretty good job at that. So in my office of civic engagement, we have a group that's focused on what I call civic partnerships. And they're the ones who really have developed a lot of the relationships with some of the community leaders and community organizations on the South Side. In Woodlawn, just to take one example, there's an organization called the Network of Woodlawn. The chairman of the board is Dr. Byron Brazier, who is the head of the Apostolic Church of God there, with the main church in Woodlawn. As part of the Network of Woodlawn, they have all the community leaders, or not all, but the vast majority of the community leaders in that neighborhood are on the board. And they've identified 4 or 5 different areas. POA, I know, is involved with the Network of Woodlawn. We have a seat on that board. So the University of Chicago is literally connected to the board and the decision and the planning, and we're integrated directly with the community. That's one of our stronger ones, but we also work closely with the Washington Park Consortium and QCDC in Bronzeville and some other organizations. And so that kind of integration is what has helped us have a much better sense of what the plans are from the community's perspective, and how we can use our role as an anchor to help leverage and advance those. But I totally agree with you that this doesn't work if you're not connected to the faith community, the nonprofit community, the business community, the philanthropic community in these neighborhoods. Otherwise, we're just doing stuff at random that may or may not have the impact that we desire.
Staying focused on Derek for a moment, he laid out a few refinements of the employer-assisted housing benefit package of the University of Chicago, and I would invite anyone here who's been thinking about that, since he laid those out, a tiered financial incentive, targeting developments, we'd welcome your feedback on that because that may be also useful to other employers that are place-based and are trying to have an impact both on helping their workers and in impacting their surrounding area. Any opinions that people want to share? Free consulting help for you. Marty Stern in the back row there, or almost back row.
The one thing I would encourage you, Derek, is to actually
Marty's
get
with
in-
U.S. Equities.
I'm sorry, with U.S. Equities, Realty Marty Stern. And I'd just encourage you to see if you can't get involved even earlier in the process, in the underwriting of the process. A project may be up, you want to support it, but there may be some projects that will only get done if the university steps up early with that level of commitment that you're willing to make to existing projects. So in terms of an enhancement to your program, I'd look very, very carefully at which projects could you be part of the genesis for, not just support after they're up. You'll get potentially a higher quality of project and maybe more product in the market.
Excellent point, and I think also relevant to the OTTO story about being that risk taker. Jim?
Yeah, I was going to suggest that the idea of not having a fixed benefit, I think tiering it, showing flexibility, depending on what the project actually needs. I think Mr. Roeser clearly reflected that in how he approached different houses in different ways in Carpentersville. I think that's critically important, as well as Marty's point of getting involved early to assist projects to get off the ground. And again, it would be a different scale.
Another hand back there? Nope. Okay, last call for a question. I don't want to miss anyone. Yes, Bill, you get a second. Go ahead.
Thank you. As you chose to move ahead in rehabbing homes that were in poor shape, how many did you have to do before you developed some momentum, before there was enough interest generated that you thought, I'm onto something here? Because, do you have to do 2 or 3 or 10 or 15 and take on significant risk?
That really was critical mass is the word that we use. That is an important part of this. Once you start, you've got to keep going or you have wasted your investment. In the Morningside neighborhood of 134 homes, when we had about 20 apostles living in there, that started to change the dynamics. But it really didn't change until we were kind of now in the 50 or 60, so half. In the Meadowdale area, there's 5,000 homes, and I can't fix them all, and they don't all need to be fixed. But we put an OTTO sign on them so people knew that there was a critical mass of change coming. And we had to do probably 50 before, well, that's about when Kane County heard about us. Yeah, about 50 homes.
Telling. So a couple of things as we wind things up. First of all, just a few themes that I heard emerge from both the comments and reflections and your questions is that as we look to anchor institutions, their self-interest in a positive way, and also the desire of the community to help them be helpful to their local communities, we probably don't have all the alignment that we need. So Tom really emphasized the point of government, in some cases, getting out of the way or changing its regulatory mindset so that we enable this kind of entrepreneurial spirit and that we align incentives where it's really going to make a difference. I know that I'm encouraged that your relationship with Carpentersville is greatly improved. I know the City of Chicago has been a key partner to the University of Chicago for its program. They've been instrumental partner to the Metropolitan Planning Council. Illinois Housing Development Authority had for many years offered a number of tax credits and incentives, which was the enticement needed to get employers to even consider this. Some of those incentives went away for a little while, and they are recommitting to those. So that's a very positive, hopeful note about aligning employers' interest with governmental assistance. I would also make the point that we would fall into a trap and miss an opportunity if we labeled this a housing assistance discussion. This is about an economic and community development momentum. And if those conversations don't intersect, we're missing the boat. So we need to align our focus on helping the eds and meds and manufacturers and other sectors succeed, and how can some workforce housing assistance be part of the mix of their success and their neighborhood revitalization success. That kind of getting the right people in the room approach is something that the Metropolitan Planning Council is known for. So we commit to playing our role in that. And then I think constant reinvention was a theme that I heard. Some good advice from the audience and some thoughtfulness from both of our speakers about how they've tried different things and different tools work in different neighborhoods, looking at the housing stock, looking at the type of purchasers. Those trends require us to adapt and adjust. So MPC can help tell those stories, document. We do need to measure different things, and then push that information out, hopefully to not only share the credit for the trailblazers that your institutions are, you as their leaders and your institutions, but also inspire others. So we're excited about playing that role and figuring out the right focus. I want to thank Lily Sellers over here, who did all the legwork for today's roundtable. Lily, thank you for helping us identify such a really fascinating duo to help us learn today. And I also want to call your attention to this evaluation that each of you has on your seats. It is really helpful for us to know what worked and what didn't. We had 2 speakers today. Sometimes we try to cram in 4. What about the format? Just give us your feedback about what works for you and what we should try. And then if you're hungry for lunch and for information, please join us again on Friday. I think there's a little bit of room left on our noon roundtable this Friday the 1st. It's on bus rapid transit on a roll in Chicago. And we do have an interesting panel that includes the CDOT Commissioner, Gabe Klein, and CTA officials, and also Nick Turner from the Rockefeller Foundation. Rockefeller, as a national funder, has taken an interest in Chicago being an innovator in this area as well. So we're deeply involved with bus rapid transit's rollout in Chicago, and you can come and learn more. Also, stay in tune with us through our website, metroplanning.org. We post a lot of information almost daily on that website, and hope that both events, but also our information, our networks, is something that you find useful and that you plug into. So thank you again for making time on a snowy Wednesday to network, learn, and move this region forward together. Let's give a round of applause to our panelists.